Good evening, and we're going to get started. And I think everybody is excited about today's session. Today, we're going to talk about how to tell your story, which is becoming ever so important, whether we are talking about interviewing, we're talking about your communication skills, or we are talking about personal branding. And the reason why is because, there's so much information out there. So, how do we create a powerful impact? And if you really want to create a powerful impact, you must learn how to tell your story. And this is becoming such an essential skill, especially if you're trying to persuade someone, because it focuses really, when we think about storytelling, it focuses on your strengths and what you bring to the table. And in this workshop, hopefully, you will learn how to tell your story and use storytelling to your benefit. So today, my speaker is Neeraja Ganesh. She's one of the topmost experts I could think of in this area. So I'm very, very excited that she has accepted our invitation and is going to be teaching us today how we can tell our story. She's had a successful career in the IT industry for over 25 years. She switched her career to work in the space of gender diversity and headed the Jobs for Her Foundation. In the 18 months that she was doing that, she single-handedly headed the not-for-profit foundation, which set up the bridge the gender gaps in India. She built a unique brand, numerous partnerships, and a large community of women who experienced a variety of learning interventions through workshops, conferences, trainings, and direct hands-on projects. She's now a consultant with the reputed training organization Basil Tree Consulting. She's also a freelance consultant who conducts various training programs and workshops on leadership and behaviors. She also coaches many, many people to progress in their careers. So with that, a very, very warm welcome to you, Neeraja. Welcome to Sipping Thoughts.
Thank you, Sukirti. And as I said, I'm really looking forward to being on this platform and sharing my experiences.
So Neeraja, I'd like to hear it from you because, we hear, and storytelling has become the new buzzword. I think two buzzwords I see everywhere, mindfulness and storytelling. So tell me, why is storytelling so important?
So Sukirti, I didn't realize that, I was doing so much of storytelling. I didn't realize that this was a term that existed. But the way I used to always, talk whenever I spoke, either in meetings or when I gave my sessions, were with stories. And then the feedback that used to always come to me was that your sessions are very impactful because you're sharing experiences. And these experiences are very relatable. And if I'm saying I went through this challenge, describe it and say, this is the way I kind of, dealt with it, people are able to kind of understand, relate, and say, if she could, I can. And then I reflected and I said, okay, this is storytelling. And hence it's so very powerful. And we will talk more about it today.
Perfect. But tell us about a journey, because you left a corporate career to start working in gender diversity and coaching. So how has that been for you?
So really, I didn't intentionally leave my corporate career. If people think that, oh, wow, it wasn't that way, it just happened. But I managed to do 25 years of nonstop corporate IT career. And I had a great support system in my family, my in-laws, parents, and my daughter also, whom you met earlier, who kind of, helped me, supported me, and we ran the show. And in 2017, this whole support system came crumbling down. One after the other, family members fell ill, and I had to obviously take care of them. And I realized, this is my time to kind of do what they have done for me. So I tried to negotiate with my company for a non-travel job, which didn't happen. So I quit. I didn't want to go back to corporate. And I was exploring a few consulting options. And the role with Jobs for Foundation just came my way. It was a passion. And if it becomes a day job, why not, is what I said. And then onwards, it has always been, what is the kind of impact that I wish to create? Which segment do I want to impact? It was women. And then I realized I want to do it in the youth of the country. So I did a few things in the student space. So that's how my journey is evolving to say, okay, what is the need of the hour? What's the kind of impact that I can create? Let me do a few things around that space.
Now, Neeraja, you also coach a lot of women. And
Right.
So what are some of the key issues that you see they are facing? And then I will hand it over to you and we'll get totally into storytelling.
Definitely. The first and foremost, which I will also speak about, is the imposter syndrome, which even now am having. Oh my God, I hope I can do a good job today. It doesn't go away. I think it's there with men also, but women definitely have more of it, and they're not able to kind of deal with it well. So that's one. Whatever be the experience, age, the imposter syndrome always kicks in. And the second is they are never able to articulate and their achievements. They always minimalize their achievements. And that's why it's so important to have a personal brand. And storytelling is a fantastic tool to be able to showcase your achievements without you feeling and the rest of the audience feeling that it is bragging. So we'll talk about that also today.
Well, I think everybody is ready. I mean, give me a thumbs up, guys, if you're all ready to get started. I will hand it over to Neeraja, and let's get this show on the road.
Thank you. And I will bring up my slides. I should know, yes, share sound is on, and I will share this. Just let me know if the slides are visible.
Yes, they are.
Thank you, Sukirti. And so everyone who's taken time out to attend this session, I'm thinking that there must have been a curiosity factor in terms of what is this all about stories, how to tell your story, and what is my story? Why should someone even be talking about their own stories? So to start with, I would really want each of you to put out in the chat. We all have your names on your screens for sure, but if you can precede it with one adjective, which actually narrates your story. One adjective, but it has to be describing some story about you. If we had the opportunity, I would have, said, okay, now you tell me, why did you call yourselves? Like, for example, and I always do this by saying that use the adjective which starts with the same alphabet as your first name, but it might be a bit too difficult. So any adjective is fine. But let me, try. Neeraja could be a nice Neeraja, or it could be a nasty Neeraja. But there are no stories that I wish to talk about nice and nasty. But I will definitely call myself a networking Neeraja, because I have so many stories about the networks that I have built. And that's what has helped me reach where I am. And that's my story. So if I can see something coming up on the chat, which is an adjective against your name, and if we have some time later, I will definitely ask you to describe your story in terms of why you think that is the right adjective to talk about you. And in doing this, I'm sure you will reflect, you will find it a little difficult, because we never think of ourselves as a story, right? And when I'm saying put one word to talk about your story, it's that much more difficult. So let me see if something is coming up in the chat.
Lots of interesting things. We've got determined Deepa, daring Dina, ruminating Vrumi, passionate Gayatri, charming Chetna, passionate Nirjana, curious Karan, persistent Urchana, awesome Anita, financial friend Prerna, and I put smiley Sukirti.
Oh, wonderful. And someday we will sit down and listen to your stories around why that one adjective describes you. The reason being, if somebody else were to ask about Sukirti or about Prerna or about Neeraja, they should be able to say, you know what, she is the networking Neeraja. She is the smiley Sukirti. And in 30 seconds, talk about that one thing, which obviously is the brand for that person. And it will happen. Don't you worry. Don't think it's very difficult. It's a question of realization, introspection, understanding, and then practicing it. And we'll be there soon.
We're getting lots of beautiful ones. Daring Dimple, Miracle Manu. I love it.
I would like to meet Miracle Manu and see what miracles she can run for me. Anyways, let us move on.
I hail from a very remote village in a beautiful place called Wayanad in Kerala. We had no electricity in my village. We had no roads in my village. And schools were miles away. I had to walk miles to school. And the government's midday meal scheme was the biggest motivation factor for me to go to school. Three-time meal was a distant dream during our childhood days. And sort of breakfast was a luxury. I'm Mustafa PC, CEO and co-founder of ID. We make world's best breakfast idlis, and we touch the life of a million people every day with a healthy food.
So how many of you were able to relate the initial storytelling that came to Mustafa and to ID Fresh. Let me see if there were some people who were able to, with that story. I hope everyone was able to hear it a little
think the
well.
sound volume was a bit low.
Okay.
But, so that I think maybe you can narrate the story so people will get a better idea.
Definitely. Audio is not clear. Fine. Okay. That's I'm sorry about that. So the story, so this is about Mustafa, PC Mustafa, who is the CEO and co-founder of ID Fresh, which many of us, might be buying the products. These are all the products that ID Fresh brings to us. And this is his standard introduction. If you go and Google for his videos later, it's an amazing, story. And he says in his introduction that he came from a remote village in Kerala, and he came from an extremely, say poor family where having 3 meals, especially the breakfast, was a luxury. And then he introduces himself as the CEO and co-founder of ID Fresh, who make the best breakfast available to the country and across many other countries. And he calls out idli as that best nutritious breakfast. And he says, we also impact millions of lives. Now that's his story. Now that you heard this, is there something that, it kind of, makes you think? What is the impact of that storytelling? For those of you who didn't know this background, but were going ahead and buying ID products, now that you know this story, would you think of it differently? Right? And look at the way he introduced ID. If you look at any other entrepreneur, what might be some of the things that they will talk about? Name of the company, designation that they hold, CEO, co-founder is perfect, but they may talk about, these are the various products that my company makes. And then they may talk about either, the number of employees or the kind of revenues that they have and things like that. But he doesn't say any of that. He's very clear. He talks about idli, which is the basic meal that someone can have. He doesn't talk about any other products. And he says we impact 1 million lives. And what an impactful introduction, something that we all will always remember. Next time you pick up this product and this brand, I'm sure you're going to be relating a lot better to this. And if you have never ever tried this out, you will now want to go and try it out, right? And that's the power of stories. And we will talk about it as a tool for communication. And communication is everywhere, right? So where all can we use this? A few things that we'll definitely talk about is maybe if you are introducing yourselves, either at an interview or as an elevator pitch somewhere, or maybe on social media. And a large part of today's discussion will be how to use it to develop and present your own personal brand. Let me move on.
I hail from a very
sorry,
remote
it's
village.
playing the video. I'll move on. Okay. Now, George Bernard Shaw said, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And why is this so? Now, the basic communication principles, right? Everything we do is communication. Today, I'm communicating with all of you. You are talking to the maid, it's communication. You are talking to your stakeholders, it's communication. You're watching TV, it's communication. The end of the day, everything around us boils down to communication. It is a two-way street. And what do I mean by it is a two-way street? It's not about communication between two people is the two-way street. The two-way street is the way the message is delivered often affects the way the message is received. So I am saying something. I don't know what you received it as, right? And that is the two-way street. Did you really receive it in the same way as the message was intended to be received? Now, if you all come here saying, gosh, the title of today's show was, how do we narrate our story? And here she goes on taking communication lessons, communication 101, which we've done years ago as a student, when we got inducted into our organizations and every day, there's a reason for that. Now, if you recollect some of these communication 101 sessions, you would have been told that there are three big aspects to communication. One is the verbal, one is the tone, and the third is the non-verbal. And you would have seen some percentages also that people say, right? The verbal only impacts 7% of the quality of communication. However, the tone impacts around 33%, 38%. But the non-verbal impacts 55%. Now I've given you some gyan, okay? Now, if I were to say this differently, so in one of the organizations that I worked, I was asked to head this team of technologists, really talented technologists, core in their domain of retail banking, about 40 odd people. They each of them at least 10 years of experience, the most senior most with 15 years of experience. I came from another team. I had no knowledge of that technology or deep into that domain, and I was to go and head that. And the management had given me some problem statements to say, this is what you need to fix. Now, what do? As a new leader, you have the problem statement from the management. But I thought I must actually build trusting relationships with this team, because there were so many of them were wondering, why should this position be given to some external person? I myself deserve it, is what some of the very senior folks were thinking. So in the first 1 month, all I did was sit down and do one-on-ones with each person in the team, 40 odd people, scheduled 1 hour one-on-ones, which went on to 2 hours, 3 hours. Sometimes we came back after a break because we really wanted to understand their story, their growth in the organization, their challenges, their aspirations. And then after a month of collating all of this, I sat about actually fixing some of the issues that they had raised. So I decided to go team-centric rather than management-centric. And I thought, I'm doing a great job in establishing myself as a leader here, building that trust. And in 3 months' time, I will be able to then take on the ask of the management and start working on it. 3 months down the line, I actually, asked one of the girls who had become a little, close to me, saying, what does the team think of me, right? Give me some candid feedback. And she came back and she said, they think you are unapproachable. And you can imagine the shock I had. Imagine I've sat 1 month with these people's one-on-one hours together and actually proven that I'm not just doing this, to get some brownie points. I really want to fix your issues, and I've gone ahead, and done a few things that they had asked for. And 3 months down the line, they are telling me they think I'm unapproachable. So I said, what more should I do, and why is it? And then she told me this. So just around that time, when we were doing all of this, the entire office layout was being changed. Good old days when we went to the offices, right? And we had to shift from where we were sitting into another corner of the office. And we were allocated about 50 seats. And I'm usually a very democratic leader. I don't say do it this way. So I said, come on, guys, you decide where you want to sit in that space that has been allocated to us. Maybe you want to have the developers together, the testers together, leaders together, whatever, you decide. Just give me one seat, somewhere in the corner. And she said, because you've gone and sat in the corner, the team thinks you are unapproachable because you don't want to be part of the team. Now go back to the stuff that I said about verbal, tone, and non-verbal. If I were to just tell you non-verbal takes 55%, you'll start looking at your body language, your gestures, your eye contact, and you'll prepare that way for a presentation and things like that. But now when I narrate the story to tell you why non-verbal is so important, what was the non-verbal cue that I was giving to the team? By saying, let me sit in a corner. The message that they got is, she doesn't want to be part of the team. She just wants to keep herself aloof. But what was I thinking? I thought that anyway, most of the times I'm in meetings and I will go into a meeting room. So a corner is good enough. Let the team, sit the way they want to. So I said, how do I fix this? And this girl said, very easy. Just find a seat in the middle of the happening place and things will be sorted. And I did exactly that. I found a spot in the middle, took my basta bag and my laptop and sat there. And actually it made a difference Because every day now I'm hearing each one shouting and screaming and enjoying, and somebody is frustrated with the customer and what's happening in their personal lives and all of that. You kind of gel much better with the team. That one-on-one conversation is one extreme of trying to build trust and relationship, but just this gesture of you going and sitting within the team in the midst of the happenings is different. And what I'm trying to prove today with narrating this story is that if I were to do a communication session and tell you verbal, tone, non-verbal, versus I narrate the story and say, people, communication is most impactful when even the non-verbal is taken care of like this. Can you see the difference? And that is why storytelling is so very important in any kind of communication. Now, some of the top communication problems that we all are aware of, listening, right? It's passive listening. Active listening is about, okay, I'm hooked on to what you're saying. But most of the time, you say, I will see, especially in the virtual world today when we can easily switch off the cameras. Nobody knows what you are up to. We don't know what you're listening to. There's lack of interest and attention. So those of us who have children studying in schools and colleges, we know what they are up to, right? The lecturer, poor guy, poor lady is continuously giving lectures, and the students here are doing something. Roshan has raised his hand, and I'll definitely come to you, Roshan. Assumptions that the audience has understood. Now I'm talking, continuously talking here. Since I noticed that Roshan has raised a hand, now I will, ask Roshan and Karan, what is it that you wish to, ask me? Otherwise, here I'm going on and I'm thinking whatever I've said, the audience has understood. Language and vocabulary. If you think that you have great language and you're using the choicest of words from the dictionary, we think our communication is great, but sorry. If you've heard some of the TED Talks and some of the, fantastic other talks, speeches that people have made, sometimes the speaker doesn't have great language. He may not necessarily be a English speaking person, but the stories that the person is narrating, that makes the difference. So language and vocabulary do play a part, but not necessarily. And that's why, we have communication issues. Belief in values and emotions. If I was, representing the senior management and coming and telling my team about a decision that the organization has taken, which is not necessarily a very pleasant one. I know we all have gone through, right? When the pandemic hit, there were so many decisions that organizations took in terms of salary cuts or, laying off people. You are not necessarily going to believe in the values and the emotions of the organizations. How much ever I tell, hey, the organization really cares for you. So this is another issue. And nothing is memorable. If you're sitting through, say quarterly results reviews, every quarter they put graphs and numbers. Why should I remember? This is another quarter, you will present. I will just be there as a passive listener and get going, right? These are our communication issues. Yes, I can take some questions. Let me see what's happening in the chat.
I think Karan, if you can write down your question. Otherwise, we will take the Q&A in the Q&A session. But
Definitely.
Sonal has said our boss doesn't listen to us. And I think Roshan is having a problem with his mic or video. So not an issue.
All right. Okay. All right. We will definitely keep looking at the chat. Otherwise, as Sukiti said, towards the end, definitely there's a Q&A session. Now, again, today we are talking about how to narrate a story. And I'm just trying to build the rationale and the reason in terms of why storytelling is important. When you narrate stories, like I narrated some and we heard Mustafa's, these stories become very personal and very relatable. I'm sure many of you would be able to relate to a Mustafa story. Many of you would be able to relate to the story that I spoke about in terms of getting the feedback. I'm not approachable just because I went and sat in a corner. Now you might be thinking, oh, maybe that is why that person is really not, talking to me so cordially. Maybe I'm doing something which is giving different kinds of perceptions. The story itself is probably giving you certain ideas in terms of how to correct certain behaviors, probably. The listeners are able to experience the story. The story is said well, then sometimes you're able to experience it. You're able to visualize it and say, wow, okay, now I get it. It is always memorable. Stories are always memorable. And the listener is able to capture, recollect, and reproduce. So in this case, if I were to ask you, can you tell me the 5-6 points which were there in the previous slide? Nobody will remember. I also will need to go back to the previous slide to look at it. But if I were to tell me those three things which are most impactful in communication, you will be able to now talk about the verbal, tone, and non-verbal. If nothing, at least the non-verbal, is the maximum impact because of that story. And that story will always bring that aspect back to you. That picture is talking about there's a science behind storytelling and why storytelling is so important. It actually triggers a lot of hormones. It does what is called as neural coupling in the brain and a lot of other activities because of which the storytelling becomes so powerful. And hence, we need to spend some time to understand how to tell stories, where to tell stories, and get started with telling stories ourselves. This is the phenomenal question that always comes. Now, tell me something about yourself. Who wants to put something on the chat? One line, tell me something about yourself. Standard question, right? When you go to the interview, tell me something about yourself. That whole 5 pages CV is sitting in front of the hiring manager. The person will still say, tell me something about yourselves. Let me hear from people. What do you want to, tell me about? I'm Roshan. Okay, all right. Which I know because you've already got your name in there. I'm a confidence builder. Okay, let me tell you a story, Karan. Very good start. A passionate learner. Wonderful. So where do you get these kinds of questions? One is, of course, at an interview. Second is the opportunity to deliver an elevator pitch. Now, I don't know when we will all get into elevators. We are always hopeful. Someday we will. But there could always be opportunities at offline get-togethers and online conferences where you get to spend some time with people and you need to introduce yourselves. Personal introductions, professional introductions, social media headlines, right? All of these places, you need to give a very brief introduction about yourselves. Now, if I had to introduce myself, I say, what, I've got about 30 years of experience in the project management space, for example. And that's majorly, I've done managed projects. If I was, getting interviewed and somebody said, tell me something about yourselves, I'd say, I've got 30 years of experience in project management. And I have always been, put into the most challenging projects ever. And I've always come out successful. Say this is the way I introduce myself. Now, there is a 5-page CV which is sitting, and I've done this, right? As a hiring manager, I'm not going to go from top to bottom or bottom to top. I'll just pick up one random page and say, you know what? Yeah, in 2015, you were part of this project ABC. You say that you were always put in challenging situations. Can you narrate something from there? And to my luck, 2015, probably I was, just hatching eggs for the 6 months because there was nothing that was coming in the, from the customer. Maybe it was a bad time. And you don't want to, show those areas. You don't want to you want your CV to look full. There should not be a gap. So October 2015, I finished this. Immediately November 2015, I started something. So we fill our CV that way. And maybe this particular project is not the project where I can really showcase myself. So if I were to introduce myself like this, by saying that, yeah, I have been, managing projects all through my life. I've been put into the most challenging projects and I've come out successful. Let me talk about this one where I was told by the management that this particular team that you're going to be managing next is known by one number, 44. The staff engagement score of that team is 44%. And the attrition in that team is 44%. And we want you to transform this team to be the most engaged in the organization and, of course, bring down the attrition levels. And I did that. In 3 years' time, I turned around this team to have the highest engagement score in the organization. It was at 65%, which was one of the industry benchmarks also. And the attrition had fallen to single-digit numbers. That's my introduction. What will happen? Of course, I've hooked the interviewer. In this case, I'm talking about interviewer to something. He or she will want to know, how did I do this? 44 to single digit. Was that single digit 1% or 9% and 65% engagement? And the reason I'm talking about this is because it's 3 years and I have enough meat and masala And I can really showcase every strength and capability of mine. And probably this is the kind of a role that I'm going to get interviewed for. So I want the interviewer to spend the maximum amount of time there. So I'm leading the interviewer to what I want to talk about by narrating this story. Elevator pitches, like Mustafa's elevator pitch, where he doesn't talk about numbers, but he gives a story about his background, and he talks about the nutritious breakfast, and he talks about the million lives that he is impacting. Imagine people will want to know more about how he did it. Why does he do it? Correct? Social media headlines, for example, right? I'm stuck with project manager because I have was a project manager all through my life. So supposing you have a headline saying Neeraja Ganesh project manager. Somebody is just, browsing through some profiles and says Neeraja Ganesh project manager. Okay, another project manager, let me move on. Sorry, project managers, I've got nothing against you. I'm just trying to say, I can say social media intern, or I can put out any designation that way. But if it's just that kind of a designation, do you think people will come and look at your social media profile also? They'll just kind of go away. If I was actually sending a request to Sukirti and, all she saw was Neeraja, project manager, she'll say, should I? Maybe not. Maybe somebody will say, oh, I think she's looking for a job. Let me not connect because I don't have anything to offer. But if you had a social media headline which said, like I have, said something in mine, LinkedIn, it says, passionate to bring about a positive mindset shift with every interaction that I have with women and students. So many people have sent me requests to connect. So many people that I have actually asked them to, connect with me have said that headline was very, intriguing and interesting. And hence we wanted to know, what do you do? So then they will come further down. They will see, other parts of your social media, LinkedIn profile. There are certain videos that I have put and, a lot of other stuff. So this tell me something about yourself at any given opportunity has to be that crisp and concise, but a story. A story will be that much more powerful than just saying, I'm so-and-so with 10 years of experience or 15 years of experience. Just doesn't matter because every other person has similar designations and similar experience levels. So that's one of the places that you must think of a story. Actually, LinkedIn today, in the profile picture also has an option to put out a 30-second video if you go on and notice there. That's a great opportunity for you to put your 30-second elevator pitch in the form of a story. People who see that will definitely want to know you more and know you better. Yes. Any thoughts based on this? Any successes that you've had in terms of putting out these kinds of very creative and intriguing headlines, either in your social media or when you gave an elevator pitch somewhere and somebody said, I want to know more about you. Can we meet up? Because that's the idea. The idea about this is not for you to get the job. The elevator pitch, and that's a session by itself we can do, is only to get you a second meeting. And that's why that has to be that impactful. And just by saying I'm so-and-so, managing so many projects, delivered all of this is not going to be impactful, but that story that you bring out, whatever that be. And it has to lead you in the direction that you wish to go, right? I believe people can write on chat. So if you have any questions, observations, anything that you want to share with me, please do. People are always intrigued.
He's sharing that he's always intrigued when they see my CV in video form. My CV is 50 to 60. So Prabodh would love to hear more. And a lot of people want to get communication tips for introverts, especially as they're moving to leadership positions, because they find it challenging to want to tell their stories.
Okay, all right. So we will definitely speak about what kinds of stories, where you can use and how you can use. If that doesn't answer that, maybe, that's a separate session itself, that Sukirti can actually curate to say, okay, we'll do a little more deep dive into communication for sure. Keep it coming. I definitely will be interested in, knowing which of your social media headlines has really worked like that. And I can have some learnings from that too. All of us are learners, right? There's nothing, in terms of being perfect at this. Now, let us go to personal branding, because a lot of storytelling can help in terms of building your own personal brand. And let us understand what is personal branding. Many of us know, but just, just to kind of connect the dots. Think of any of the brands that, like ID is a brand, okay? If you've been buying ID, or any other brands that we shop for, the clothes, the boots, the shoes, whatever else that you buy. A brand is nothing without a story. So all of us are attached to brands because of the backstory that it has, right? So Apple, there is a backstory behind it and we are kind of attached to it. So brand is nothing without a story. And similarly, your personal brand is the story that each of us carry. So you are your own brand. And what is your story that people need to know, because of which they reach out to you? Because at the end of the day, that's the reason for creating a brand, right? Why do companies invest on, building their own brands and brand presence? Because you want more and more people to get attracted to this brand and hence buy it. How does your story support your growth? This is the most important aspect. So going back to that adjective that you gave, all of us give different kinds of adjectives, and there are so many things and aspects to us as an individual or as a professional. But now when I'm telling you, how does that particular adjective actually support your growth in the direction that you want to go, either, in your personal life, professional life, or holistic life? Start thinking of it in that manner. And that is why, that is the personal brand that we are talking about. And why is it so important? I really want you all to understand why personal brand is so very important. Of course, it helps you stand out from everybody else. Remember, any of the brands that you buy, why do you always go to a particular brand? It's because it is something that is standing out for you. Maybe for somebody else, it's a different brand. Doesn't matter. But, each of the brands have their own fan following, and, that's good enough. And they're trying to capture the market as much as possible. And hence they're trying to showcase their brand in so many ways. So personal brand also is so very important. It helps you to stand out from everybody else. So I am not someone, so like Sukirti said, I do a lot of coaching. I do a lot of leadership training sessions. And today we have so many people, my peers who do so much of coaching and leadership training sessions. So what is it about my brand that helps me stand out against everybody else who's out there in the market? It makes you memorable. And that is why personal brand is so important. And I want to, spend some time on what Meeta Malhotra said. Meeta Malhotra, the ex-partner and director of Ray and Keshavan, which is, India's leading brand consultancy. And she said this in one of the interviews. She said, if you take me out of my current business context, who am I? She's asking herself, because she for a long time was associated with Ray and Keshavan. And that's how she was known. And then when she came out of that, the question was, who am I? My identity had merged with the company's identity. And so the answer to that question, who am I, could be that you're a nobody, because now you're no longer attached to that particular identity or that identity which that organization gave you. I went through this identity crisis in 2017, September. I quit from, Capgemini. And I wasn't having a job and I really didn't want to get into the corporate. So I was thinking of what to do. So the whole month of October 2017, I was meeting a lot of people one-on-one, as well as, attending a lot of meetups. That's a way that we all network and try to build relationships, right? And first thing is introduce. I was struggling to introduce myself because I always said Neeraja Ganesh, director Capgemini. And now who is this Neeraja Ganesh? Ex-director Capgemini didn't make sense. Trying to say I'm a bit in between jobs, or, I don't want to go back to the corporate and hence I'm looking out for something. I really started feeling apologetic about myself, not having a designation, as if that was my identity. And there was nothing else to kind of, say this is who Neeraja is. Today, when somebody asks me, okay, fine, come and give a talk, and they say, okay, fine, what is the designation we need to put? Because every time you have the speaker name and there will be a designation, I say, well, I really don't have a designation because I'm a freelance consultant. I don't run my own company to say, okay, CEO, founder of this company. I'm a freelance consultant. So you can say anything about me. You want to say coach, you want to say author, you want to say speaker, you can. Because people today reach out for Neeraja Ganesh. And that's the brand that I have built. And hence it is so very important for all of us to spend time See, all of us have a brand. So you're not building a brand today. There is a brand that is already associated with you, but is that the right brand? And why storytelling helps here, and how storytelling can help you kind of get your brand visibility out. Before that, let me quickly talk about 2 points. Storytelling is essential to effective communication. I think we've kind of said that through all of the minutes that we have spent till now. But there are 2 aspects to storytelling. Everybody can narrate stories, but that storytelling is going to be effective in terms of communication, because communication is a 2-way street when you have engaged the audience and you have moved them to action. So with all the stories that I told you till now, if it was, okay, I heard it, it was interesting, and I go back and I live my life the way I was living, I'm not moved you to action. See, when you come to these sessions, of course, you want to spend time, you want to, get inspired, but you want to learn and do something, useful with whatever content you learn here, right? And that's the action that you have to take. Have your stories moved the audience to taking some action. The second is, have they only consumed, okay, you told story after story after story, they heard it, or were they able to experience it? So when I narrated the stories, were you able to visualize how Neeraja was in the middle of that, 50-member team and in the happening space versus how she was when she was sitting in that corner? Did you visualize it? Did you experience that and not just consume? These are the 2 most important aspects to storytelling. I'm happy to hear in the chat whether I have been able to achieve either of the 2 with, whatever stories I have narrated so far. Please be candid. Let me know in the chat whether it has happened or not. Okay, Sharda. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm going on the right track. So I am practicing what I am preaching. I'm so glad to know that. But this is the most important aspect of storytelling. All of us are storytellers because we've been born and groomed on stories at home, and we kind of know how to tell stories. But this is the most important aspect when you are actually using it for communication for the purposes that we are talking about, especially in the scene of building your personal brand. Now, where are these stories coming from? What are these resources and where can you tap into? It is your own diary. In this case, because we're talking about yourself, right? How to narrate your stories. Of course, you can always narrate other stories also to bring about a perspective during conversations. But in the context of today's session, because you have to narrate your story and maybe at interviews or, to showcase your brand, it is your own diary. So can you please start putting down somewhere in an Excel sheet, in a Word document, in a notebook, everything that happens with you happens to you, because these are the resources that you are going to use tomorrow and in the months and years to come. Either when there is an opportunity for you to prepare and hence kind of deliver either at a meeting or a talk, or sometimes you're not prepared, but you just end up being in a group of 10 people and you need to kind of narrate something about yourself. Pick it up from your diary. So it is important for us to write these instances down, because you're not going to remember everything. Over a period of time, you will. Like for me, because I've been talking and giving so many sessions, certain stories will just keep coming up. But still, when I prepare, like for example, this session, I sat down for some time and said, which story should I bring out in this particular context, right? When to narrate? Anywhere, everywhere. There is no right time. You don't wait for some big event to narrate stories. It could be a weekly team meeting. It could be a town hall, one-on-one, customer call, meetups, online events, social media posts, and we will be talking about that also today. Use stories abundantly. Now I will come to, a tip, a trick in terms of how to make your brand visible. Some of us will definitely be able to identify Apurva Purohit on this slide. So the story goes this way. I had invited Apurva to give a talk. Her book had just released, Lady, You're the Boss. It's a phenomenal book. If those of you have not read it, pick it up and read it. Amazing book. So I had invited her. So I'm part of BCIC, Bangalore Chamber of Industries and Commerce, and we have various wings, and there's a women's empowerment, wing also in that. And I had recommended that we bring Apurva Purohit to Bangalore and have her talk. Now, I'm a nobody, like I'm just part of this, committee. I don't hold any senior positions or anything like that. But because I had made that recommendation and I got her, they told me I should introduce her. Now, what does introduction mean? I got this small bio from, Apurva's office. Mithali, she sent me this bio and she said, just read it as is, right? And that's all we can do, because it's a bio and you can't, just be very creative about it. You have to read it as is. But, one thing that I do is and this is one of the mantras that I say, treat every interaction as an opportunity. So I have to make use of this opportunity of introducing Apurva. So I did this. When she walked into the room, I just told her, is it okay if I read a little bit from your book? She said, it's my book and you're reading it. Why will I say no? So I got her permission. And then when I was asked to introduce, I said this. I said, this book, it spoke to me. It was as if every chapter that Apurva has written has been from my life, because I could resonate with every chapter in that book. And I took an example of a chapter which was on the imposter syndrome. And I narrated a story about how I had imposter syndrome when MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the USA, had approached me to become a jury member for their Global Innovation Challenge. And my first thing was, oh my God, I'm not qualified enough for this. I will recommend somebody. But then I have trained myself to deal with this imposter and quieten it and say, I never say no to any opportunity. So I narrated this story and I said, yeah, I was on the jury of MIT's Global Innovation Challenge for 3 years in a row. But I dealt with the imposter, and that's one of the chapters she's written about in the book. And then I read her bio, the small bio, whatever they had given. And then I read from this chapter, which is called as Midlife Crisis. Okay, I'll just read one last paragraph from that book, from that chapter, where she says, one of my pals, Nidhi, had an epiphany in her mid-40s when it dawned on her that she had spent a lifetime accumulating expensive kanjivarams, but had never had enough time to attend occasions that could justify wearing one. Faced with a cupboard full of beautiful but unworn kanjivarams, she decided to do something about it. She started wearing her kanjivarams to office. Every day at 9 a.m., she would walk into the office and bedazzle everyone, decked out like Rekha at the film fair. And then she ends it by saying, we have all spent the first 45 years of our lives accruing security and stability while fulfilling all the roles demanded from us. In this first phase of your lives, we burdened ourselves with expectations imposed as much by others as our own selves. Let's spend the next 45 years having fun and doing only those things that we choose to. Now, which kanjivaram will you wear tomorrow? And I said, Apurva, I chose to wear this kanjivaram today. And then I said, will you please come on stage? And Apurva said, I don't even want to get up from here. I just want to keep listening to you, Neeraja. So what did I achieve? One is, by talking about that imposter and that story, I put out a brand image of Neeraja to say that, oh, she is a jury member on MIT's. So somebody kind of remembers that. While I'm not bragging, I put it in the context of the book, the chapter Imposter Syndrome, how I dealt with it, but I sneaked in my brand there. And then I made an impression on Apurva by kind of relating that chapter, ending it with the kanjivaram. And I very strategically wore a kanjivaram that day. It wasn't by chance, it was by choice. I said, this is how I'm going to do this introduction, because this is an opportunity which I won't let go. And let me tell you, Apurva has become one of the best friends for me today. Right? So anywhere I want to, invite her, she says, she's one of my favorites. I'm never going to say no to her. That's how you make your brand visible. So quickly, I know I have to take questions from you. What are some of the questions that will help you with storytelling? Keep these in your kitty of, the diary of stories I told you. What has been your biggest achievement? What is the bravest thing that you've done? How did this idea come to you? What has been your most challenging moment? What about your surprises, people? Like, for example, I say this, I was a meek, timid, shy girl. For the first 10 years of my career, I did not even say hi to the person who used to sit next to me. And it is true. I'm not making it up. And people will say, really? How did the transformation happen then? That's it. You've got them to kind of, know more about you and the story. What do you value most? Who is your inspiration? And I always will talk about Pankajam Sridevi, who's a role model for me. And she's a master storyteller. She's the MD of the Commonwealth Bank of Australia now. She worked at ANZ, where I had also worked. And I will talk about stories that she has narrated, which has been so impactful for me. What do others say about you? And there could be many other things. These are just some guidelines in terms of what kinds of stories you must keep in your kitty and how do you use them. But remember, you can use the same story in different contexts. So the story that I gave you about the 44 number, I today said I can use it as an elevator pitch at an introduction, or I can use it to say, you know what, this is how I manage my teams, or, any context. So don't think you to have 100 stories. You can have 10, 15 stories, but use it in different contexts. But one thing, don't introduce yourselves in the same way, because if you have a fan following, then people will kind of want to hear you at every opportunity. And if you're narrating the same story as your introduction, they'll say, okay, now I can also narrate the story. So make it a little different every time, and which I do. Like, I do sessions on networking, and I must have done 30, 40 sessions by now, minimal. I run the same slide deck, but what the stories that I narrate are different every time, because they are kind of contextualized to the audience that I'm going to have for that session. So it is important. And quickly, how well does the online world know you? It is so important to have your story out there. All of us do, use social media to put out some posts. I just want to talk about this particular post of mine, which I put out a month ago, which when I last saw sometime today has crossed 100,000 views, got 1,700 likes, 140 comments. Now, not every post of mine gets this. This is the first post of mine which has got this. And I've got about some 20,000, connects. But 100,000 views means there are people who just don't know about me also who have liked this. Why? This is the post. A senior woman leader asked me to refer resumes of women leaders for a role in her organization. She wants to ensure that her leadership team is diverse, and hence she wants to have enough applications from women for some of the vacant roles. I started tapping into my network and reached out to a few women. I will quickly just go through, you should look at this later. And I said, while I was getting disappointed listening to these reasons, another lady whom I had approached gave me this reason. I've not updated my resume for close to 4 years. It will take me time to update it. I will let this opportunity pass. Now, Indra Nooyi has said, the glass ceiling will go away when women help other women break through that ceiling. My soon to be released book, You Have Arrived, No Glass Ceilings, No Broken Rungs, No Glass Cliffs, is my way of helping women break through that glass ceiling. Now, this post is a promotional post for my upcoming book. All my posts on LinkedIn are promotional. Either it'll be talking about a video, a blog, a write-up, an award. Every post of mine is promotional. But there is a story, and people will get hooked onto that story. And then, the rest will happen. And so it also touched 100,000 views. It actually touched 80,000 views in the first 6 days. And then it took, a month, 3 weeks for it to become 100,000, those 20,000 additional views. My friends, storytelling is very, very impactful. And the most critical tool that you can use when you are communicating. And what do? We are always communicating. So can we start talking about ourselves and our stories so that you are more impactful than you have ever been? Thank you. And that's my LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you. Please do let me know that you attended this session today so that, I know who you are and I will accept your request. Happy to take questions.
So we will be going into the Q&A, but I've got to tell a story because I worked with Jagran with Apurva Prohit. So I love her as much as you do. And she's also a fantabulous storyteller.
Right. Very true.
I'm going to ask Dr. Vandana to ask her question, and then we'll move to Deepthi.
Yeah, good evening, Sukirti, and very, very good evening, Mrs. Neeraja. I have a question on this to cut it short. How do we differentiate between, a storytelling and self-praise? Because half of the time we feel intimidated, when we are telling something nice about us. So how to make it more crisp? How to make it to hit the nail? How do we do that? Thank
So
you.
I already, kind of gave a cue, right? You have to be contextualizing. So for example, when I did that at that event, I ensured I could have narrated any story from my life, correct? But I contextualized it to say, here is a book that we are going to be talking about. So everybody's attention and what they are looking forward is to the book Lady, You're the Boss. So I picked up a chapter from there, which I felt, and I'm genuine about it, right? Imposter syndrome, exactly what we're speaking about now, is something that, kind of kicks in. So I said, I will use a story from my life, which will also serve the purpose of building and showcasing my brand, but also talking about one of the chapters in the book, which is what everyone has come to hear of. So nobody will think that I was bragging, I am praising myself. They're just going to say, wow, she related it so well, right? I'm hoping so. So that's the point. You have to showcase your achievements. But instead of saying, you know what, I have done all of this in my life, and that is why you must listen to me, look at the discussion that is happening. And in that context of the discussion, bring in the story where you have been able to, contribute so phenomenally well. People will appreciate it. They will not think that you're bragging, but they will say, okay, that's also another way to handle this. Why not talk to her a little bit more? Context is very important.
No, and I love the way, like I said, the way you threw in MIT, the way you threw in that you met Apurva, the way you threw in that your book is coming in. So look, and when we were hearing all these stories, I think Neeraja was also giving us so much information about herself. But at the same time, it did not feel like she was bragging about herself. And it is no small feat, let me tell you, to be on MIT's board, because when I saw that, I also fell off my chair.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Amita, go ahead. Please ask your question.
Yes. Hi, Sukriti.
Hi.
Yes, I have a question here for Ma'am, Neeraja Ma'am, and some of the situations she had explained were similar to mine. But I have two questions. One is, does age matter in a CV?
Amita, you're
Also
breaking up.
branding and storytelling.
Amita, you're breaking up. Your first question was, does age matter? Your second question?
Does age matter in a CV?
Maybe you can put it in the chat,
Yes.
Amita, because we're not.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
You're breaking up, Amita. Do you want to put it in the chat?
Yeah.
So the first
let me answer it. Please put your second question. While I've not understood the context why you're asking about the age, but generally for a CV, let me tell you this. You have to make it stand out. And how do you make it stand out? You have to make it stand out in terms of those achievements, which are so very different to the rest of the world. So I used to, tell my daughter when she was much younger about CVs that used to come to me because I really wanted her to follow a particular path. So I used to get these CVs of young graduates. All would look the same. Engineering students, this particular stream, this particular college, this is their GPA. But I would pick up. So there was this girl's CV that I picked up because she had mentioned about she being on some international debate competitions. And I said, doesn't matter her engineering, because what I need is someone who can communicate. And with someone who's been debating, I think she will get the job done for me. Uske baad, whatever skills are there, we can always hone it, as she goes along if she's not, the best. And I will at least interview her. So can we talk about those differentiators, which is nothing but the way you want to showcase your brand? Why is it that someone should take you into the testing team? Why is it that someone should take you into the social media team? If you're going to say, I put out 100 posts, for my previous organization, blah, 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 that's your job. Yeah. Everybody will do that. But the posts that I put out, continuously got 50,000 views. And hence, we had these conversions or these leads or whatever. So that's the bit, right? So don't write stories in your CV and make it pages. Just talk about the project. What was your responsibility in a couple of lines? And that one achievement, don't write 10 achievements, it's not required. That one standout achievement, age will not matter. That standout achievement will get you picked for the interview. Has Amita written her question?
We will get back to that. We'll
Right,
take
sure.
Meenakshi still there.
Sure,
And
yeah.
if that's okay with you, Neeraja, we have two more, one from Satnam
Sure.
and Prachi.
We'll do that.
To that. So go ahead, Meenakshi.
Hi, Neeraja. It's
Hi.
always pleasure to listen to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is, why would somebody hear our stories? And as you said, not everyone, can be different. So how do we highlight our achievements? How do we pick up that one thing in, we ourselves will not know what we are up to or what we are, so how do we pick up? I know we have to be different, our USP has to be there and all that. Being a marketing professional, I know all that. But, if I hear somebody else's stories, after some point I say, okay, why should I hear that? So same way, if I am telling my story to somebody, why would they hear to me?
So first of all, each of us is an achiever. Can we all start thinking of ourselves like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Each of us is different. Each of us has our unique strengths. This is one of the things that Apurva also says, Apurva Purohit. She says, can you stop thinking about your weaknesses and areas of improvement and just focus on your strengths? Because that's what you are good at, but somebody else is not good. And that's why you will get hired or, called out, to do the job. So let's start focusing only on our strengths. We may want to work on our areas of improvement. To an extent we could, but then the rest you leave it because there'll be somebody else who'll compliment you.
Absolutely.
So start thinking on those areas of strength because of which you did something which was so different to the rest of the team. Each of us has something to narrate. And that's why I said, can you list down whatever happens on a daily basis or a weekly basis? Otherwise you'll forget it. And we don't think a big deal of every small thing.
Yeah.
And that is something that, I have also learned by looking at some people to say, in an online space, if you're kind of an e-commerce kind of a person or you're kind of an online portal for something, even if you manage to get 5 people to come to your portal and have a discussion, 5 is no big number. Speak about it. You be proud about it.
Yeah.
What is it that you did because of which these 5 came to you? And then what did you do with those 5? See, even networks is not a number game. You could have I have 20,000 people on my LinkedIn. Does it really matter? But what is it that you did with those 20,000? Were you able to create an impact, whether to one person or to 20,000? So all of us have something to talk about, more than one thing. Let's start journaling. Let's start writing it down. So today this happened. And I'm sure I feel good about it.
Yeah.
We stop minimalizing ourselves and say somebody did better than me. Let them do their better. You have done good for today. Can we jot it down? And with that, start practicing to say tomorrow when I meet someone, can I use this story in certain contexts? What are the contexts in which I can bring the story out? People will. If you're going to remain in the context, they will listen to your story. I will bet you on that.
Very well said. Very well said. So thank you, Neeraja.
My pleasure. I'm glad it was useful.
Go ahead, Prachi.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, Neeraja. Good evening.
Hello.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So, ma'am, my question is, as we have discussed about establishing personal brand, like establishing personal brand is a necessity in today's world. So, I think personal brand should definitely resonate with our personality. It should be resonate with our attributes. Otherwise, it won't do any justice to the recruiter or anywhere where we are
Sure.
on social media. Yeah, right. So how can we go about it? How can we discover that?
So I say, please be genuine. Okay, be very genuine. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, ma'am. One more thing I want to add. Yeah, ma'am. Like you have suggested right now to add adjectives before your name, and somewhere we have to introduce ourselves. So at that place, definitely we should add up a whole matlab story, brief, not whole story, briefly we should add to that. So how we can discover that? My question
As
is
I,
how we.
yeah, you need to know what you are. See, ask the question. If you don't know, what is that one thing which distinguishes you from all of your peers, be it in college or wherever you are going to interview, then how will the recruiter know, and why will the recruiter take you? That is something that you have to introspect. So there is some introspection that you need to do to say, okay, what is that particular brand that I want to be visible, right? Like for Neeraja, I write, I speak, I execute a lot of gender projects, and I do tons of other things, and I have an IT background. But I never today talk about my 25 years of IT career, because I know the brand that I wish people to know me for is the fact that I can impact audiences. And I do 100 things for that. I will speak, I will write, and all of that. When we have a conversation about some assignment that's coming my way, we will discuss what's the best way to create that impact. Correct? So you will have to reflect to say, what is that brand? What should Prachi be known for? You will have to reflect that. So do some introspection. And in that introspection, you will be able to, recognize from the past experiences where you showed something, a particular trait of yours, which was not necessarily there in everybody else around the team. And because of that, they said, Prachi, you're going to deal with this. You're going to handle this. Okay. In closing, I know we are already 6 minutes beyond time, but I thought this particular story might help prove that point. So in ANZ, we had a new MD who had come in. He was from Australia. We were in ANZ, India, Bangalore. So the way people get introduced to the MDs, and I was like at a mid-management level. So small groups of people used to be introduced. So there was this group of women leaders or potential women leaders. They see a lot of potential in some of the women in the organization to take on leadership roles. So there was one meetup organized for these 15 or 20 women leaders with the new MD. And I was also there. And I think in those days, I wouldn't speak much and all of that. I was just there. And of course, introductions, I had said I manage Asia Pacific. I was heading the retail banking division of Asia Pacific, and had the good khana, samosa, and whatever else was there, and came back. A few days later, I see an email from the managing director. His email says, if anybody can do this, it is Neeraja Ganesh. Then I went further down of that email. It was an email which started from somebody who was in the Papua New Guinea Islands. It's an island in the Pacific. And ANZ was running a competition. People do these, companies do these, right? Breakout competitions, talent shows, and something like that. And each of the participants had to put in on an intranet portal a video or an audio or whatever you are going to showcase in your talent. This person was trying to put it on the portal and he was unable to do so. So he had escalated it to the country CEO of PNG, and she had sent it to this MD in Bangalore because it was a tech hub. We were taking care of the technology. And Fred is, the MD is sending this email saying, if somebody can fix it, is Neeraja. And I said, who? Why me? Because I don't handle this intranet portal. In fact, I didn't even knew that there was a talent show going on because that was my interest level. But if the MD has said no questions asked, and the deadline to submit was that night, so I figured out, got people who's managing this and got it fixed. Now, I never had the courage to ask the MD why he said this, but I reflected, and there could be two reasons. In my introduction, I had said I handle retail banking for Asia Pacific, and this is a Papua New Guinea PNG island in the Pacific, so maybe. He kind of said Neeraja. But there is another thing. There was a brand for Neeraja that everybody knew in the organization. She gets things done. And I'm sure when somebody had said this is the cohort of future women leaders, he would have said, okay, why is Neeraja here? And they wouldn't have said because she's heading Asia Pacific. She gets things done. So he would have put 2 and 2 and said, chalo, she will get this done. Let's tell her. That's your USP. Can you reflect? Why do people come to you in your organization, in your team, at home, wherever? And then use that to build your branding and presence and your stories around it. I hope that was helpful. I'm sorry, I keep telling stories.
Next question from Satnam. Go ahead.
Neeraja ma'am, I have heard you first time. And I'm a speaker myself. I'm a trainer, facilitator myself. But I just cannot tell you how much you have moved me today. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm talking to you. I'm getting to speak to you. Thank you, Sukriti, for giving me this opportunity. I have no questions as such, Neeraja ma'am. I just want to thank you. I just cannot tell you how much you have helped me to just, rethink about myself. Like, what am I doing? So I just want to thank you. And I think I till now have heard brilliant speakers, but I think till now, and from the bottom of my heart, you were the best one, because you spoke from the heart. People do come with pitches, with memorized stuff, but you spoke from the heart, and that has moved me. Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you, Sukriti, for introducing her to us. Thank you. I mean, I didn't know her, so that's what I'm saying. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
My pleasure. And this is the proof. This is the proof that the stories were able to, move you to action. That's the, so everybody can narrate stories, but please narrate it in a way that people move it to taking actions. And thank you so much for this honor, Sabina.
So Neeraja, we've got Neha, but before Neha, a couple of people have asked this question, and I want to make sure we answer it about introverts. Because introverts really shy away. And I think that came in the chat 2-3 times.
Right,
so can we give any tips for introverts? And Neha, I'm going to take your question, and that's the last one. I apologize if I haven't been able to get to anybody else's question.
So Neha, I told you, right? Yeah, the story about me, I am an introvert. I am an introvert. Let me tell you that. Even today, while I have a large network and I do these talks, as a personality, I am an introvert, okay? And I did not speak for the first 10 years in my career. I told you that. I did not even say hi to the person sitting next to me. I would do my lunch all by myself at 3 o'clock, go pick up my coffee, have by myself, and come back and leave at 6 o'clock. That was me. What helps us is, as Satnam was also saying, is be very genuine. You don't have to put on a show. Just be yourself. The minute you are yourself, you will feel comfortable. So don't put on a show about anything, about the language, about the accent, about the clothes. Forever in my life, I have been in saris. Whether I visited Paris, there was a time when I was selected as one of the 11 women leaders in the organization globally across, Capgemini, one out of 11, to go to Paris as, potential women leaders for a women leadership development program. And they said the dress code is Western formals. I refused. I said, I don't feel comfortable in it. I've always worn salwars or saris. I'm happy to wear salwars or saris. I'm sure you've not chosen people based on their dress code, correct? You've chosen people based on certain characteristics that they bring. And the coordinator was stunned. So she went back, she discussed, and she came back and said, okay, ma'am, you can come, wearing salwars, but very muted colors. Because Indians, we like our colors, but there all the Western formals are black and gray and beige and whatever. So I said, okay, I shopped around. That's me. And people remember me for my saris, however traditional I look with one bindi and all of that. So introverts, be yourselves. And what is that one thing about you which differentiates? Again, it's the same. You will get the confidence to speak about it the minute you feel comfortable just being yourself. It's a very, you may think, what is she saying? But try it. Don't try to ape the rest of the world. Don't think the extroverts can, go ahead impressing. Even you can impress somebody if you just be yourself, think about what is it that you bring to the table and start practicing this. Practice it with some of your, very close family and close friends and all of that. The confidence will just increase and you'll be able to do it over a period of time. I've been able to do it after 10 years of not speaking. I took the step. I was pushed into the water. That's why I took the step. But you should kind of not need to be pushed. You should go and swim. So make that attempt. You will be able to. I guarantee you that.
Thank you. And Neha, we will take your question now. Go ahead, Neha. Thank you for waiting so patiently.
Yeah. At the outset, I would like to thank both of you for instigating, the need to reassess one's own self. And my ma'am, I'll just be precise. The question that I have in my mind is that you've highlighted of, highlighting on your achievements and kind of contextualize it to, narrate a story. So how old can it be, because in a career span of about 13 years, there are different different instances which one would want to narrate, but it's usually the most significant comes the first. But how old can we narrate a story like that?
You can narrate any story from any aspect of your life. You can talk about a personal story in a professional situation where you need to kind of speak, as long as it is within the context. It can be as old as possible. It doesn't need to be recent, or it doesn't need to be the best achievement of yours. As I said, as long as it proves the point that you want to prove in that context, if the story suffices, even if it is 10 years old, it doesn't matter. I have narrated stories from the time that I actually was picked up into a job, to this story, which is, I said, 10 years I kept quiet, and then the transformation happened. I narrate those stories also. And I talk about my corporate IT stories also. And I talk about my jobs for her stories, and what happened when I went to work at a college, and what is happening these days. It doesn't matter. The point is, are you speaking within the context? Otherwise, they will say, okay, she's just saying something, kuch samajh mein nahi aa raha hai. The attention will get lost. So please, marry. It doesn't have to be so very, okay, fine, I'm introducing myself, so I will have a pitch. Somehow you will have to find the marriage of that story with this context. And that's why it's so important to keep a bag of stories. And when opportunities are there, then you can practice, reflect, which of these stories can I put here? And over a period of time, even without preparation, you'll be able to pick a story and narrate to the context.
Well, thank you, Neeraja. That was absolutely brilliant. I think a lot of people, I'm just going to take from Sayali, she's saying, listening for you for the first time and your story impacted me. And I think it has impacted so many of us. So any closing thoughts, Neeraja, as we end for tonight?
I really want to say that each of us is a story. So can we all, and I think we have a mixed audience today, largely women, I'm guessing. Most of us women, we think we are not good enough. We are good enough. We are much better than many others. Just focus on yourself. Don't start comparing yourself with anybody else around you. Bring out those traits of yourselves. That's good enough. That will take you places. Be very genuine and authentic.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we hope to see you back really soon. Thank you, Neeraja.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. Have a good day.